Hello and welcome. Good morning. This is Sunrise. I'm Ayo Makida, and as you can see, I tend to be home alone today. Partly because my colleague got to a fuel station the other day, and guess what? There was a long queue. No, that's putting it nicely. It was a very long queue. So she began to ask the question, why in the universe? Hey, we already buy fuel for 500 naira per liter, or thereabout, depending on what part of Nigeria you are, between 488 and sometimes, in some cases, 500, 600. We even hear some people are selling it for 700 naira, well, buying it for 700 naira per liter in other parts of the country. So why do we still have queues? Can someone help us understand that? Particularly at what we would call the unofficial NNPC fuel stations. We still have those long queues at the fuel stations. So one is wondering why that is the case. Why do we have queues? Can someone help us understand that? We also understand, we heard this news also, that the NNPC says that within the next few weeks, maybe months, I think from August or thereabout, it's as early as how oil marketers can themselves begin to bring the products into the country. That's rather cheering. I mean, some people would say that that's very, very cheering news. The question then you want to ask is, what happens after that? What's the build up to that? Well, for me, I've begun to research how I'm going to convert my tank into CNG. Yes, I don't know if you're thinking about it, but I am. I understand from available information as at now that it could cut the cost of fueling or powering your vehicle by at least 30%. Some vehicles already use it. Trucks already use CNG. Those things that look like tubes behind those tanks, those trailer truck heads. Yes, those are CNG tanks, and they can actually put it in your car as well. And I just saw a video that showed how safe it is. That at an impact of 7,500 psi, the tank is still intact. Your CNG tank is still intact. Now that is something. So no matter how bad the accident is, the tank doesn't explode, doesn't get bad. I think that is something. So it is part of government initiatives, and I think that's been on for like 2020 to 2021 till now. It's part of an elaborate plan of government. So one is hoping that eventually it is something that can be considered by every single one of us. So let someone help us understand, why do we still have fuel queues? Maybe some peace will come to the hearts and minds of many. And I also know that a sizable number of us woke up to that news that the governor of the central bank has been suspended. Now, there are people playing on words. Hey, come on, we're Nigerians, right? Is this sack or suspension? Well, what the news says is a suspension, and it's going to lead to investigation. Of course, you would remember, for those who have been following the news, that the DSS has had its eye on the CBN governor for a while for one allegation or the other, and it got to a head late last year, I think, and even into the early part of this year, before or sometime around the elections, that the CBN the DSS was trying to get a hold of the CBN governor. Well, I guess with this now, it is clear that whatever the investigation is can go on. And there are sundry issues that a number of people have raised. Some have raised the issue of all those conversations that the DSS started, all those issues about terrorism financing, Naira redesign policy, multiple exchange rates, all kinds of things that the CBN governor has to answer. And, it just raises a number of questions in my head. Hey, at the end of the day, that office, whatever role or office or job you have on your hands now, whatever position of privilege or influence you have, is transient. It's going to expire one day. Then you're going to have to move. right? So whatever honor or privilege you're getting today, it is because of that office, not because you're so well loved. Now, there are many other things that a number of people are talking about. Some are even looking in the direction of all the things that have happened since this conversation started, since the president, got into office. Back to the issue of fuel subsidy. So, did you hear about that information that in one of the neighboring countries, allow me not to mention any name, that there were protests? Yeah, that. There were protests in that country by their, bike riders, commercial bike riders, that because Nigeria increased its fuel price. Yeah. It also leads to that information the president put out, saying, look, Nigeria can no longer continue to be Father Christmas to neighboring countries just because it's big brother. Well, this big brother seems to be getting rather, what's the word now? Rather broke. And okay, some things need to be done because the huge revenue challenge Nigeria has in the light of its huge debits, not something sustainable. And then in the light of that, finances, revenue and everything comes, at the heels of that comes the comment by Chief Afebalola that members of the National Assembly shouldn't be getting the kind of package they're getting. They should be getting sitting allowances. In other words, if you don't sit, you don't get an allowance. Now, that's a great idea, but I'm wondering how that can become law. Should we ask the National Assembly to pass that law? Someone should even come up with the bill. Will that bill even come from the presidency? Hey, how about you come up with the bill and send to the National Assembly that members of the National Assembly should not collect salaries, they should only collect sitting allowances, enough of all the humongous money allowances and travel allowances, furniture allowances and everything that they get. Just come, sit, do your job and go. That'll be interesting, but I don't know if we can do that now. And if it's going to be a law, how is it going to be passed into law? I'm thinking maybe it's possible, but hey, the 10th National Assembly, they're still looking for their leaders. Hopefully, from what we understand, by June 13, the pronouncement is going to be made, and then they're going to elect their leaders, hopefully before the end of next week. Let me just put it that way, because in Nasarawa State, we had 2 speakers in one day. So hopefully before the end of next week, we'll have just 1 president of the Senate, 1 speaker of the House, and 1 set of leaders in that in those houses of the National Assembly. So that advice from Chief Babalola is not just for the National Assembly. He also talked about those for the executive positions, presidents or past presidents and past governors. So they are, how do we say it on the street, made for life. Once you have been governor and the court no court has invalidated your ever holding that office, then you get paid every month or every year. That's if we calculate how much that is, that's quite something on the budget of the company of the country. Yes, Nigeria is a company, but let's not get into that. What do you think of that? You want to share your opinion to us? Sunrise CTV is our Twitter handle, and of course you can send us an email. The information will be on your screen anytime from now. Well, having said all of that, let's get into what we have lined up for you this morning. I talked about revenue. Well, that's the first item on our list this morning. Boosting the revenue of the government is the first topic we have for you. And then we have a couple of information. Peak Performing Woman of 2023. What is that about? We'll give you the details later. Let's also not forget, sickle cell is not a death sentence. So, of course, you know what that is about. The fact that you have complications from sickle cell does not mean that you are sentenced to death. All the talk around that, how to live a good life, you know, irrespective of being sickle cell positive, you will come to you on the course of the program. On Lifestyle Today, yes, that's what we are telling you. What happens when you sleep? What kind of sleep? How many types of sleep do you have? Sleep, how important is it? Is it also true that if you sleep fewer hours, you get rich? Those who are motivational speakers going about that, you know, those who are going to be very rich and powerful in the world, they don't sleep all the time, they sleep for shorter hours. Is that true? We'll give you more on that later on. And our artist of the week today, let's just say he's a guy, okay? And let me just leave it there. I don't know if he's as tall as I am, but he's not as short as Nedu. Well, let me just put that, Nedu Najoko, as you guys put it. Well, that's the lineup for this morning. We'll be right back to get into the details of it after this break. Please stay with us. One of the most difficult things for you when you're a big brother is that you can't ask anyone for money. Everyone comes to you for money. But when you, the big brother yourself, are not doing very well, it raises a lot of questions. So Nigeria is seen as big brother Africa, isn't it? But then Nigeria is having its own issues with a growing debt burden. Now, to ease this growing debt burden, the Tinubu administration has to address the country's declining revenue. Nigeria has the fourth lowest revenue to GDP ratio in the world. It has been reported that Nigeria's total debt in 7 years outweighed the revenue generated by the federal government by 13.2 trillion naira. Of course, a number of people have pointed fingers at the CBN violating its own law of going above the 5% of a previous budget to balance out the government. And a number of people have been wondering who is calling the CBN governor to account on that. And that is, oh, by the way, we can also tell you that unconfirmed reports may be suggesting that the CBN governor may have been arrested following that suspension that we told you earlier. Of course, you also saw on channelstv.com, our website. But that confirmation will come over time. Now, the Bola Tinubu administration inherited an economy that is grappling with inflation, chronic unemployment, extreme poverty, crumbling infrastructure, insecurity, among several other things. A good number of that is also obvious in the multidimensional poverty figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics, saying 133 million Nigerians out of a little over 200 million are living in multidimensional poverty. You need to really understand what that means. Let's have conversations around this morning. We have three gentlemen. Two of them are with us at this moment. Richard Mark Mbaram is Director General and Chief Executive Officer, Feed Nigeria Summit, Secretariat Abuja. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We also have with us Manuel Ijewere, who is Chairman, Best Foods Group and past President of ICANN. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Let me begin with you, Mr. Ijewere. So this is where we are, and a good number of people have been. Let's begin with that, which so many people have talked about concerning what the CBN governor or the CBN did, going above its limit of 5% of the previous budget to fund the federal government. What is your take on that, and what should have been done that has not been done?
From my personal opinion, I believe that that happened because it appears that under the law, the CBN appears to be accountable to nobody rather than the president. There is no institutional control, and it appears that the power of the CBN through its governor is so excessive that even those that should have had the moral suasion on it, like the various private banks in Nigeria, don't have that kind of situation. You have the bankers committee, the chairman of it is the governor of the central bank. They virtually issue decrees, and I think we need to go back to the law. If you are not accountable to anybody, you really cannot really check yourself. That's basically the big problem with the central bank. It is overpowerful. And once it gets the support of the head of state, he believes that it's above the law. Basically, that's my opinion on this.
Are you by any chance, well, not to use the word strongly, but for want of a better word, Mr. Jewere, are you by any chance suggesting that the federal government under the previous leadership are culpable in this?
Absolutely. Oh, certainly. They have the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance should have an overriding control over the central bank itself. The central bank cannot run the Minister of Finance, but in the last administration, I saw the Minister of Finance was virtually emasculated.
Okay, well, Mr. Mbaram, the challenge is that of revenue. The federal government was, for want of a better word, hamstrung and needed bailing out, if I can use that term. That's why the CBN stepped in. The other option would have been to go out of the country to borrow more, isn't it? So, in that light, even though, as you said, there are those who will say the end justifies the means, but then does it?
No, I mean, you want to be a bit, realistic to say that a governor of the central bank, like Dr. Jawara just said, would not dare to take on certain measures, inimical to the overall interest of the polity if he does not see himself as being empowered by forces that would necessarily give him all of the protection that he requires to stay in power, in office. So that would set that tone. But if you're looking at the overall realities of the government, bailouts are utilized all over the world. Quantitative easing and terminologies of all of those of that sort all play into that into that ecosystem that you need to support an economy and try to ensure that inflation does not destroy the fundamentals of any given economy that you're looking at. But in the case of Nigeria, I think that the realities were better seen, or are better seen from the standpoint of the fact that it was more of a very fabricated problem. I want to say that, because if you have a situation where you're paying so much on fuel subsidy, and you know that the bulk of your revenues are coming from the petroleum industry or sector, and you have a president setting out to be the petroleum minister from the get-go, all right? That means that you're saying, in effect, that everything around this ministry and around this sector, I take responsibility for it. And by that stroke of the pen, you have more or less created a situation where even whistleblowers who would ordinarily have been in a position to say, hey, there's something going on in the system. I've seen what goes on in the public sector. You wouldn't dare, question a permanent secretary's decision if you are an assistant director or a deputy director or even a director. It takes a lot of guts to do it, even as a director. So you see a situation where folks would want to toe the line because the buck ends at the president's table. So the responsibility for the economy it is on account of a consistent, deployment of resources, scarce resources, in some instances in which you have to borrow in order to fix the realities, should ordinarily rest, like you said, on, and Mr. Jerry confirmed it, on the president.
The reason I'm asking this question from you gentlemen is, if we don't know where we got it wrong, getting it right will be a problem. So in the light of this current reality that we have now, do you see that gap as a significant one in the revenue of the country? Let's start from there. Do you see that as a significant gap where the CBN cannot be curtailed by any other than the president, especially according to its own laws, that once you have the approval of the president, you can do whatever you want, while in fact, by the organogram, the CBN works with the Minister of Finance?
So again, we want to be down to earth with ourselves, because the Minister of Finance, who is supposed to be exercising control over the CBN Governor, answers directly to the president. So if the president decides to empower the central bank governor, there is absolutely nothing the Minister of Finance can do if she wants to remain in office. So sometimes...
Is it because it is or it is not, the finance minister's role is or is not a statutory role?
No, that is the fact. It's not a statutory role. She serves, at the pleasure of the president. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it would be appropriate for a person who has, will I say, credibility to say, I won't take this, I'd rather resign. When you do that, you indicate to the rest of the polity that there's something wrong somewhere. So I will point at Kachuku, for instance, who said, look, I can have this, I'm done. So it already tells you that in that ecosystem, there is a problem. And that is a flag that the National Assembly ordinarily, if the setting were running properly, would key into and then take to scale.
Okay, let me ask Mr. Ijere the same question, but in a different way. Quite a few times, the Buhari government called the personnel in the entire security ecosystem of Nigeria, saying you guys should work together. And when they made that call the first time, I expected, look, hey, as a general speaking, he's the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, so everyone should just fall in line. But that meeting was called like one or two other times after the first one, meaning they didn't quite do what the president said. Do you think it's the same thing that happened in the finance sector, where there is discordance of sorts? The CBN not working in cahoot with the finance ministry, not in cahoot with the office of the auditor general, not in cahoot with the office of the accountant general. Do you think that's what happened?
Well, I really don't think so. I believe that the real issue was the powers that the law that set up the central bank gives to the governor of the central bank. It creates a situation where it's accountable to nobody. I was referring to the fact that our banks, our private banks in Nigeria, all 27 of them, have some of the best chief executives you can find anywhere in the world, very intelligent people. But the power of the central bank is so much that it can withdraw the license of any of those banks for any reason. And they are so frightened that when they go to the meetings, they virtually listen to instructions from the central bank and have few inputs. And I think that's where the problem comes from. It's not the president of Nigeria, yes, has some responsibility in this. And it's also possible that he does not really fully understand. He did not really fully understand what it is all about. He was not elected to be the governor of the central bank. He was elected to govern Nigeria, to manage Nigeria as a company. And he had people who were to hold various sectors of the economy. And I want to really come up again to the issue, because what we're talking about here is revenue generation. And I think a lot of it, very little of it, depends on the central bank. Central bank is only a bank. Central bank is not a revenue generation organization. And therefore, they will hardly be held responsible for lack of revenue generation, like was rightly pointed out. Revenue generation to GDP is one of the lowest in the world. I think this is something that is far wider than the central bank itself.
Well, I agree with you, Sejure. The reason for bringing that up is in the light of recent developments, and I'm just wondering how one can transit from that into this, conversation that we're having now. The reason is this. So we're talking about revenue, but then some of the policies that will encourage that revenue will come from the finance industry, headed by the finance minister and working with the CBN. CBN also has to come up with policies, fiscal policies, monetary policy, and all of those things. That's in the light of the conversation. And so how significant would you say, well, Mr.
I wanted to just put things in perspective. You see, you just had a CBN governor who has been asked to go on suspension. He led a CBN that basically was involved in everything, including agriculture. I mean, we were complaining at the time as to the fact that the Anchor Borrowers program, for instance, should be driven from the agriculture ministry. That's where you have the experts. That's where you have individuals who can readily, answer to realities that present themselves in the course of implementation.
Let me ask Mr. Ajowi, do you agree with that, or you think it was just something that needed to happen?
I think I agree with Richard very much, but I will quickly add that the idea of the Anchor Borrower Scheme was a beautiful idea. It is the execution that was the problem.
That's right.
Central Bank was not the body to execute it. They should have worked in conformity or in consonance with the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, where, like Richard said, where the experts resided. And I believe that was the real problem that existed there. Central Bank overreached itself by taking it up all by itself.
So let me ask you pointedly, Mr. Ajowi. What are the issues bedeviling Nigeria's revenue challenge, and what needs to be done?
It is bottom up. First, the Nigerian Constitution has 3 tiers of government. You have the local government, the state, and the federal. The local government is to be the one nearest to the grassroots, and is supposed to put in place those laws that will encourage these people to generate income. By generating income, you can tax those incomes. The state government is supposed to put all its local governments together, make laws that will create activities, economic activities, that will generate revenue again and tax those revenues. The federal government's revenue generation comes mainly from the corporate organizations, not from the individuals. The local government and the state governments rely on the individuals. So enrich your individuals in your local government, in your states, you get more money. At the federal level, enrich the companies and the corporate organizations, you will get more revenue. That is the basic and fundamental issue here. What policies that are put in place, frighten investment. Investments bring wealth, but if you frighten the people and make those laws where you tax people even before they get the income, they are discouraged. That's what happens. I give an example, simple, and I'm glad that Richard and I also operate in the agricultural space. We have calculated that a trailer coming from Kano to Lagos, has to face about 34 checkpoints along the road before arriving in Lagos? What are the taxes? What income has the driver earned? What the tomato is carrying? He's not even the owner. He pays all along. There's damage to it. These are little grassroots things that destroy our own country. The other one is those people who are at the checkpoints. Who are they? Some of them are local government. Some of them are federal officers, military people, policemen, customs. You also have the state, interstate, as if you are going from one country to the other where people have to pay duty. These are issues that are helping to discourage investments in Nigeria, and these have to be tackled from the grassroots. We need to work it from bottom up, not start from the top.
Okay.
A lot of problems are arising because we are not looking deeply at these. If we want to create revenue, we create wealth. You don't tax poor people because they have nothing to pay tax with.
Is this a question of quick ones, Mr. Jury? Is this a question of policy or is just execution?
It's impunity. Impunity in the sense that you can do whatever you like.
All right.
The laws are clear.
Okay.
The tax laws are absolutely clear. Just that people who even understand the law deliberately ignore the law and nothing happens to them. That's impunity.
Interesting. Well, Mr. Baram,
Yes.
Let's look at this per sector.
Yeah.
Which sector, I mean, hitherto, we've talked about the petroleum sector largely, and many say that's the cash cow of the country as at now. Over time, we have also seen the services industry also play a significant role. Perhaps we can also say that the digital economy of Nigeria is also getting, more vibrant. But that's not to say that agriculture is in any way in the back burner, which has worked for us before now. If we are to focus or prioritize as a nation, and maybe primary, secondary, tertiary, sources of income, because we are talking about de-emphasizing petroleum now, how should we be looking at it?
Yeah, I think Mr. Jorge has a very valid point from bottom up. But I think, too, that you want to look at things from a macro perspective. The movement has got to be seen from the top. Leadership needs to take responsibility, and so policy must dedicatedly point to a direction which the rest of the economy will tag onto or latch onto. I say that to say this. The president has just talked about the subsidy issue and taken it on frontally. And he said very clearly, there's no money. And it's true. We are way, way, way in the red. In fact, I was speaking with someone and he said, look, I said, we have retrogressed. He said, no, we are in a ditch. We need to first claw ourselves out of the ditch and then decide whether we want to go forward or backwards.
Wow.
It's that bad. So you want to have money in the first place to run a government and a country. So there is no basis for borrowing in order to satisfy this mammoth waste. So you take it head on. There are concerns about the cushion effect and all of that, but fundamentally, that was the right decision because that frees up resources.
Well, you've not answered my question.
I'm going there.
Well, I know that you will, but let me quickly bring on Dr. Monday Michael Sashibogu, who is a policy development expert. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're talking about boosting Nigeria's revenue, and apparently the federal government, the president, has been taking some action, one of which is, first of all, cut off what a number of people have called a cancer of subsidy. How significant is that for you in cutting excesses or cutting waste?
Well, I'm not sure about the waste for now, but what I'm certain about is that you've been able to shore up some funds, which will save the government for the next 3 months. I knew that without removing that subsidy, I'm sure the government would not have been able to pay salaries for June. That was a given certainty because our debt to revenue was clocking close to 80%. And what it means is that whatever will be left is for recurrent expenditure. You don't have any funds for any capital expenditure right now as we speak. And any government that is desirous of surviving would look at the places where you know that there's a monster that exists and cut off the head. One is subsidy. The first thing you do is to remove it. We'll have the pangs will be there. You'll feel the impact. We've been shouting about this for the past 10 years. I became very unpopular about this position I took even here years ago when I said, look, there's no need saying anything about adjustments of prices or tweaking these things. We are even also adjusting prices. When you remove subsidy, you allow people to determine prices. Today we are having prices also still be determined. So what we've just done is price adjustments for now. So we're just taking care of the import cost by yanking up that import cost and leaving it at the hand of the consumer. We've not totally removed subsidy. If you remove top subsidy, the fuel stations and those who are importing will be at liberty to sell at whatever price that they deem fit.
Is that why? Because I began by talking about the fact that some fuel stations still have long queues. Is that the reason?
Well, it's a function of choice. Some are selling at prices that people find comfortable to buy with, so you have longer queues there, and some stations you don't find any queues at all, given the price, and also the integrity of that fueling station as well. Some have been notorious for adjusting their pump meters, so no matter what you say, people have already formed that perception about them, so you're not likely to see anyone there. But if you go around Lagos today, you'll find some fuel stations having longer queues than the others and the same price.
Okay, let me ask you this, and then I'll begin to take it around. And gentlemen, maybe all of us will be able to talk about this. If we boost revenue, let me be more positive. When we boost revenue, it is expected that, we'll have more money to be able to work with. But then there is also the leakages. For me, the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation is the chief leakage supervisor. Because when that report comes from the audit report comes every year, we see leaks or uncompleted transactions or whatever it is that you want to call it, or unaccounted for funds in trillions. So in terms of boosting revenue, how do we begin the process of even blocking the leakages? Because right now we have very little coming into the basket and it's leaking. If more comes into the basket without blocking the leakages, the leaks will be heavier. Don't you think so?
Okay, let me draw this analogy. We're running a system of children who have been groomed and spoiled as brats. That's why you have leakages. A child who does not know how money is made and the conscious effort the parents have taken to conserve such funds to which is enjoying that luxury would not know how to maintain that. And that's why everyone who comes into the system, particularly in public service, feels that this money is just something everybody could just latch onto and peel off. And so the leakage will always exist because we will create a system that makes it conducive for leakages to exist. And to some extent, the leakages also have a cushioning effect, because if there were no leakages and people have to go through this route of some form of indiscipline in public service, people will be up in arms against them. So there are beneficiaries of a long chain from these leakages. So what you need to look at is, if you need to also block the leakages, you must create the opportunities to where beneficiaries of these leakages who have either have nothing to do, have something gainfully to do. Now, how do you account for your public service workers? The percentage, we've talked about this Orosei report, we've talked about different reports that have been coming in. You want to fuse, you want to merge, and government as we speak today is still employing.
Okay, let me ask, it's like you just dropped a cliffhanger there. Well, Mr. Jerry, if we boost revenue without blocking leakages, have we done anything?
Not much. Not much. You know this kind of situation we have in our country. The real problem first comes from the leadership. If the leadership has a focus, it relates to the people. It is transparent in everything it does. It presents it to the people. It explains to the people. The people will better understand the situation And in that kind of environment, those various leakages will disappear. You can only thrive with these leakages when there is secrecy, when there is opaqueness in governance. So, very many of us believe that once a person has been appointed into an office, he becomes a demigod, and therefore nobody can ask him. We have not built up mentality of our people that these are servants of the people. They must be accountable. We, you and I, as we sit here, are equally guilty. More guilty than those people who are less privileged to come on television and speak. We allow it to happen. Our friends are there, we don't call them to order. So that is basically, so bringing in more money just puts more money into the pockets of people. Right, you started off by talking about the National Assembly. See how much they are earning. We all know how much they are earning. How much does the common man earn? What is rationale, for God's sake, behind that? What have we done? We know this truth. So the more revenue you bring in, the more it goes into a few pockets, the faster Maitama and Lekki will grow. These are the issues that we are saying here.
Okay.
Unless we start the mentality of questioning people, holding them accountable, we are not. We must put things in place. And we thank God we have a new leadership coming in. They need to reorientate themselves, whether they want Nigeria to keep going down, like Richard said, into that deep hole, or climb out of it. And when we climb out of it, decide what direction we want to go. I believe that they must take that decision now. I don't want to spend too much energy talking about what has happened in the past, but where should we be going to turn Nigeria around? Nigeria is a great, great nation. Absolutely. And God was very kind to give it to us.
Well, thank you for that one. Talking about Nigeria, such pride gives me a lot of euphoria. Well, Mr. Mbaram, in terms of blocking the leakages, I know a number of people have an experience or have experiences with private sector practitioners, corporate organizations, that everything is digitized, right? From sending in your proposal to going through whoever it is going to go through to a point of approval, everything is digitized. You have quoted with the public service a bit before. Do you see that as possible and workable or practicable in this current Nigeria? I know that the vice president, the former vice president, Professor Shimbajo, when he came into office, it's one of the first few things he was talking about, reforming the public sector and all of that. Do you think digitizing the system will help?
Yeah, I mean, the colleague on the other side, Dr. Ashibogu, made a point. You've got to run government as a business even, okay? And make a business case to those who are in themselves operating inimically to the success that you want to achieve. That's what makes the private sector tick. The private sector doesn't want to glory or postulate about the problem. It puts forward a solution and thereby creates value which it benefits from. So coming to your question, the key thing is basically reorientating the civil service. First and foremost, look, if we clean up this place, we will have more resources to give to you, even as public servants. We will be able to provide you this. That's the reason why I have a very good feeling about someone saying, look, I'm taking away the subsidy thing, all right? Because that confers responsibility on him. He's taking responsibility to run the setting appropriately. If you tax me in a manner that creates a concern about the fact that revenue is leaving me, I would be more interested in seeing what you're doing with those resources. But I was trying to make this point, that you can't tax a man for resources that he does not generate, isn't it? So that makes you happy to hear that you're talking now about, Electricity Act. That is the key. businesses can provide electricity, they can provide the resources to ensure that settings, take for instance a local government, take for instance a state, can be properly structured and fed power.
That's another conversation altogether.
No, it is, but it saves resources. Because right now, the man who is busy spending money on petrol to power his generator will not complain anymore. He is structured. He knows how to plan his business. The mom and pop businesses, and we're talking revenue generation, the mom and pop businesses would now begin to thrive. Then you can tax them. All right? Not just that. If you realize that kerosene and diesel are not subsidized as we speak. Kerosene is the petrol, the oil, the crude oil. The domestic petrol. I think that's better. Yeah, for the poor, that is their own petrol, but it's not subsidized. Diesel is industry's own petrol. It's not subsidized. So what are we talking about? That means the economy itself is undermining itself from a policy standpoint. So in a nutshell, you have got to approach this. Statecraft is not a walk in the park.
The reason I've been asking about, all those, policies, electricity and all those things are important. But if we don't know what the challenges are, that's the reason that these questions are being asked along the line of leakages and all. Because if you have a leaking pocket, no matter how much money you put into it, it's going to leak right out. So while government is making efforts to increase its revenue, let's watch where and how it is losing that revenue. That's the whole
The structures are there to block the leakages. But the people that are in the positions to implement those or the institutional structure is in place, but the people that should trigger it in themselves they don't see themselves benefiting from doing that directly.
Thank you. That it comes to the question that Dr. Ashibogu mentioned the other time, and you can speak to it, that those who are benefiting from the rot, if we can use the word, will not want the benefits to just be cut off. So he mentioned something about incentivizing the people in a way that they don't feel a complete sense of loss. Now, I know that there is this thing with the public sector that they can do agriculture, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Now, that's, from what I understand,
there's the one business that the public servants can do.
Do you see a policy of government that can help the public service public servants look at agriculture as a more profitable, more legitimate fallback, as opposed to the leaks that we have?
So at the end of the day, you will still come to the point where the man will be looking at whether his involvement in agriculture will make sense to him in any way. That's why you have the youth of the country. You keep saying they should come back, go to agriculture, we should return to agriculture and all of that. They are just ignoring you completely because they know you're making very little sense to them in practical terms. And we've got to understand that the people watch the leaders. You see, by the time you can see that the person is paying lip service to this undertaking, then you choose to do something else. Why do you think that we have this number of our productive demography leaving the shores of this country? And so I found it very ridiculous for someone to say, we're going to be coming up with a law to restrict movement. From time immemorial, it is opportunity that informs migration, or the perception of it. Okay. All right? If you are in a setting where everything works against you, you're producing your power, you're producing your water, you're basically even almost creating your roads. All right? You're subsidizing the government, and then you're taxed on that. It will make you gravitate in a different direction. Okay. Ordinarily.
I know that when Mr. Ajewere was talking about the number of taxes that small businesses go around with the other time, he mentioned 34 thereabout, and you said it was 60 something.
Actually, I'm sure Mr. Ajewere lost the count. Perhaps he has not had a delivery in the last 2 weeks. I know he does bulk, but Right now, there are from between Kano and Lagos, it's 68.
68 what?
Checkpoints. These are checkpoints from the army, civil defense, the police, produce, local governments. Some are communities. Because
how many toll gates do we have in this line?
We're not talking about toll gates.
No,
we're talking
how many
about
do we have? Any
checkpoints that the returns on those checkpoints do not go to government coffers. And I can tell you, if you need to guarantee your product or the service you want to move through these routes, you should pay. So that's just for hauling produce
I
from
asked
Kano.
a question, Dr. Shibogu. In the light of, well, I'm coming to you, Mr. Ijewere, so now you know that the number has doubled. But in the light of the fact that most of the people we are talking in this line who have to pay these 68 bills that are not factored into the
cost, not factored into your taxes, it's not factored into the wages, it's not factored into levies by councils.
Okay, we'll come into that.
You have 28 regulatory issues to meet as an SME.
How profitable then are micro, small, and medium enterprise? In fact, I understand that there is now nano, micro, small, and medium enterprises. How profitable is it for them to work and help the government of the federation or the states boost revenue?
Okay, let's look at this. Our tax basket is between 6 to 8% in terms of our contribution to GDP. And you want to improve on the numbers, and you're not improving on capacities of nanos. You're not improving on incentives or creating opportunities that can make it flexible. You know, we work in silos when we talk about policy developments at public sector level. That's the problem we have. You have Ministry of Agriculture doing something, CBN is doing something. You have harmony is always the issue. And I know the office of the then vice president made an effort towards this presidential ease of doing business. And we had customs going all its way to do something else different from what, they have to be whipped into line. They work for like a month or two with you. They move out again to do what they feel is appropriate. And they are right. They are protected also by their laws that establishes them. But the thing is, because we create rules and regulations that allows government, ministries, departments, and agencies to operate in silos, you will have people working at cross purposes. I'll give you an example. You have NCC Act, you have NIDA Act, then today you also have the Data Protection Agency Act. And some of them are encroaching into the turf of NCC. Now, if you want to encourage digital economy, you want to encourage digital finance, you want to encourage businesses within that digital space, how many regulators do you need exactly? So you are talking to NIDA, you are talking to data protection, and every agency you are talking to that will offer you support will ask you to pay one form of levy or the other. If you get to NCC, there's one class license, there's one levy, there's one that you would pay. You get to NIDA, you would pay one. Then you come to NOTAP, technology acquisitions, you pay. Now, for someone who is in the fintech space, you have about 6 to 7 different forms of levies and licenses you need to obtain just within the communications and digital economy ministry. You're not talking about finance. You're not talking about the council where you operate, the local council where you operate. You're not talking about the area boys who is downstairs looking after your vehicle.
And you're not even talking about the other statutory ones like the ETF, NSITF.
Good. So you see, these things are a whole gamut that gives this room for leakages. Now, if you need to stem these leakages, you say, okay, now for the area boy, where am I going to place him? Right? To make him useful. He generates revenue for himself and also can pay tax. For these agencies that are busy bringing out one levy after the other, how do you harmonize this? And have you even thought of what exactly I do and how I generate my money? You know, in fact, sometimes it is a crime to be a business in Nigeria.
It is. Well,
because the moment you put your signage, you have different kinds of personalities knocking at your door. So companies now, to play safe, avoid even putting signages. So the truth is, you need to look at how you can create a rule that is seamless from council to the national level. We also have a constitutional challenge too. Mind you that each level of government has its level of autonomy and has rights to make rules and regulations for itself. Well, that's another challenge we have.
Well, let me go to Mr. Jewere. Well, a number of issues have been raised. By the way, a quick update on the arrest of the CBN governor, former CBN governor that we talked about the other time. Well, while it is being reported, but the spokesman of the DSS says he cannot confirm as at now. I guess we'll bring you that later on. Murtala Raji says on the suspension of the CBN governor, says it's much expected considering what Nigerians went through, especially a few days to the election due to policies introduced. As regards Chief Afeb Babalola's suggestions on cutting cost of governance, I don't see the House of Reps cutting their monthly salaries, neither that of the executive or the state government. Well, Mr. Ijewere, you spoke to that the other time. Now, he said, though achieving 0.2 above will have a great impact on the cost of governance, it seems to be a tough one to achieve. Now, speaking about revenue generation, Murtala Raji says, apart from oil revenue, what happens to other revenue sources like gold, Ajaokuta steel mill that has been abandoned for years? Government should not consider increasing taxes as a means of increasing revenue. Let me come to you right quick, Mr. Ijewere. A number of issues. One of the issues that have been raised by Dr. Ashibogu here is that ministries, departments, and agencies seem to work in silos in the various industries where they are. As at, I think, 2 years ago, this report, a report ascribing, crediting the DG of Budget Office, saying that Nigeria has 1,484 ministries, departments, and agencies and corporations, about 900 and something MDAs, and about 543 or thereabout corporations of the federal government. That's just for the federal government, and then for the states. Now, the assumption that Dr. Ashibogu is making here is that a good number of these agencies that are supposed to be working together are working in silos. Now, we have quite a number of industries all over the place, the federal level, state level, local government level, and all of that. How do you see us going about harmonizing these ecosystems so that they can work together as opposed to working to shut down or frustrate the businesses that are supposed to be helping generate the revenue that the federal government needs? I know you may want to refer to that double taxation that you referenced the other time.
The first thing is we need to know that the problems we have in Nigeria have at various times in our history been researched and worked upon. But successive governments or governments that come thereafter seem to ignore what has been done in the past. If you go into the Oransayo report, it's one of the most comprehensive reports Nigeria has ever written on how to harmonize the work of all the various ministries and MDAs. It's a beautiful report, if only it could be implemented. The issue raised by Dr. Ashibogu will be addressed. You remove those silos. Go back to that report. It's a fantastic report. It took a long time to do, and the people who put it together, I'm very proud of it. This is an asset for Nigeria. So we have a lot of solutions to our problems. It is the willpower. It is the determination to go to do right. That's why I said we have an opportunity to restart right now, starting from the governor of the state. Let him have a covenant with his people and say, from now on, we shall do things differently. My convoy that used to have about 15, 20 cars will now have 2 or 3 cars. From now on, this should happen, this will happen. You will see the people will rise to support it and become more proactive with the government. You talked about digitalization. It's a fantastic thing, but it's not being used because people don't have confidence. You have a lot of things that are happening. I'm sorry to bring this up, like the issue that happened about Sheikh Kuti, Kuti. It was captured on somebody's cell phone, and it went wide, and something was done about it. So technology has not been used because people don't have the confidence that it will be used. Okay. So I am asking that our leaders must rise up now in this great opportunity and say, I have covenant with my people. Let us collectively change our country.
Okay.
The things we have done in the past, let it remain in the past.
Mr. Mbaram, we are coasting home.
I get you.
So, speak to us about the role that the local governments can play in all of this. I think it was Mr. Ajiri that talked about bottom up, and you corroborated it. You are in the agricultural business largely. What are we missing at that level? How can we cut down on the losses of the produce from the local government areas? I know that Dr. Ashibago has talked about 68 bills that you have to pay that are not factored into production. What can we do at that level?
So the third level of governance in the country, it is, for me, the closest to the people, and the epicenter where the focus of development should be directed. The bulk of the people that we talk about, the 133 million who are in multidimensional poverty, are basically rural dwellers. 75, if not more, percentage of them are rural dwellers. So the rural setting for us, I take Dr. Adesina's statement, is just cleavages of misery that we have there. So local governments are really, really so important. It is at the local government that you have the land situated, even though the governor owns the allodial title. And it is the land that you largely require for agricultural purposes. So the power of the local government, or the capacity of the local government to influence development, particularly around revenue generation and empowering of the people, is profound. But structurally speaking, within the Nigerian state's ground norm, the local government is considered a bastard, so to speak. The local government is managed at the whims and caprices of the executive governors of the states. And so the local government ordinarily should be protected. And it's...
How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it has to be from a legislative standpoint that we've got to be...
back to constitutional review.
Yes, a constitutional review.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
Dr. Ashibago, in closing, micro, small, and medium enterprises, how do we help them balance out?
Okay, I was going to talk about opportunities, right, and the quality of opportunities we create. And I listened to Mr. Jewelry. You know, he's also an accountant, for your information. So, and
he is the past president of ICANN.
So that will
for your information,
that will also tell you that he's well grounded in every issue that we're talking about now. But the thing is, quality of opportunities that will create in this political dispensation is very important. You know, for some governors, they believe that convoy of 70 cars, they've created jobs for about 200 or 300 people. So that's the kind of opportunities you may see coming up, and that's the reason why we are worried that we do not have the quality of opportunities that will come, and just people just have this hand-to-mouth mentality, cap in hand at all times. These are the things we're trying. We're looking at qualitative opportunities, sustainable opportunities. I don't have to come back to you again. You know, the moment I have this opportunity, I can put my feet on the ground. You're getting people out of vulnerable situations. Now, multidimensional poverty, it's not just, is no longer the exclusive purview of rural communities now. It's encroached into urban areas. You could see the level of how people now live their lives, even as tenants.
Help me address this in 30 seconds, if you can.
Yes.
This 68 unbudgeted bills,
yes,
that the traders have to pay from Kano to Lagos, and that's just one. I'm paying for it. How do we cut down on that? How do we reduce those costs?
I think it's also a dilemma between the chicken and the egg. Now you remove the checkpoints, the bandits are back, right? And you do not put. So that's another dilemma. So the thing is,
I think you have said enough. But
you don't throw people to the checkpoints without actually taking care of them. I've seen some policemen who have been in checkpoints in Plateau State for the past 6 months. They were transferred from Osun State. Even the uniform would speak in volumes. So you need to actually ask yourself what kind of incentives these men who are on the road have been given to stay there and risk their lives for you. So that would be one of the things that can scale down the level of taxing.
So essentially, you're saying we scale up security at those levels.
Scale up also the opportunities. And define the quality of opportunities you're giving to people.
Okay.
Not the cap in hand, we just come every day for a morsel of bread and tomorrow we're back.
Well, clearly you're saying to the federal government and the states that you guys, you don't even know the scale of problems that you have to contend with.
That's the point.
Well, we have to thank you very much, gentlemen, because it's the beginning of conversations. The tangent we have taken, the tangent to which we have taken this conversation isn't the normal way of asking questions about raising revenue, but dealing with the issues that can make the revenue raised relevant. We have to thank you very much, Richard Markumbaram, Director General, CEO, Feed Nigeria Summit, Secretariat in Abuja. Thank you so much for your time. Dr. Monde Michaels Ashibogo, Policy Development Expert. He is a past spokesperson of the National Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. Thank you for your time this morning. As well as Mr. Emmanuel Ijewere, Chairman Best Foods Group, and also past President of ICANN. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Now, when we return from this break, we're taking another topic. To stay with us. That's the next conversation we're having this morning, the Peak Performing Woman of the Year. It's a special annual edition which features 100 remarkable women in Africa across multiple industries, multiple generations, multiple countries on the African continent. Nominees are usually remarkable women across STEM, social impact and sustainability, banking and finance, professional services, marketing, media and entrepreneurship, entertainment, human capital development, the whole works. More on that this morning. We have with us Dr. Abiola Salami, the convener of the Peak Performer. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's not peak performing man. Why are you laughing? It's a peak performing woman. Don't tell me you are also identify as a woman.
Well, I identify as a man, clearly. I mean, with my beard, as we were discussing before the show, I identify as a man. And I believe that you don't necessarily need to be part of a demography to provide intervention for that demography.
Okay.
As a Yoruba boy, my name is Abiola, and so it's unisex. And there are people that at times when they see the name Abiola Salami, with the work we are doing, engaging, celebrating, and empowering women, I've received mails like, "My dear sister, thank you very much for the incredible work you're doing." So myself and my team, we always laugh when we see things like that. Except we're now in a public place, and then I'm introduced as Abiola Salami. Then the women will be shocked that we thought the person that has been doing this
maybe
is a woman.
Just put Dr. Abiola Salami, M,
or Mr. N in bracket.
This what informed this? Because it's I would say this is quite an industry that you're building, because I can see quite a number of sectors. Here cumulatively, I'm seeing something close to 20 here.
Yeah.
What informed it?
So the Peak Performing Woman is our redesigned vehicle, for our renewed commitment to the SDG Goal 5. SDG Goal 5 is gender equality. Since 2012, the name of the organization is CHAMP, that's the group. Since 2012, we've been involved in delivering training programs, coaching services to organizations, corporate organizations. And one of our commitments, our social intervention, is women empowerment. The road to equality is empowerment. The more empowered women are, the better they get. We believe that a peak-performing woman is a catalyst for socio-economic development. So we're engaging with women across multiple industries to build their capacity, while doing that also to celebrate those icons, those champions that can continue to inspire other women, not just in Nigeria, but across the African continent.
I'm looking at the list. I can't find politics here, or maybe I'm not using the glasses right. Can't find politics here. So is there a reason for that?
Well, politics is not exempted. We believe that we need to continue to have more women, engaging in politics. Our own focus is more on the capacity development, and that is for anyone. Whether the woman is a professional in a career, or she is a businesswoman as an entrepreneur, or she's committed to nation building, not just by voting in elections as a citizen, but even by canvassing for votes, by campaigning, running for office. Our commitment is empowering women across board and celebrating those icons who are delivering excellence in the work that they do.
Essentially, if you're going to go into politics, you should be a professional in one aspect of life anyway,
yes.
So we can excuse that. But so you say it's 100 women across multiple industries, multiple generations, multiple countries, just 100 women.
Just 100 women.
Multiple industries, multiple generations, multiple countries.
Yes.
That's quite a number of multiples.
It's
for 100 women.
Yes, and the reason this is essential is because we need to be, there's conversation about gender inclusion, and what we've seen is in inclusion, people actually exclude people that should be included. Our focus is on Africa. So if our focus is on Africa as much as possible, we should spread around the continent. And also, we're not segmenting this to just a generation, not just older women, not just middle-aged women, so we're looking at from 20s upwards, because if we want to be inclusive, age inclusion is critical as well. There are a number of young people who are doing amazing work, who are doing their best, who are inspiring other people. A number of women that, despite the odds, despite misperceptions, despite the glass ceiling in whichever industry that they found themselves, they are thriving, they are doing their very best, and they are achieving great results. So we're spotlighting them across different sectors, across different generations, of course, across the continent.
So how do you select these 100 women?
Okay, so it begins by calling for nomination. Okay. We call for nomination through our platform, the Peak Performer Africa, and through multiple platforms. Say, hey, which woman do you think meets this criteria? And then we spread it out. Then people submit entries. We have thousands of entries that submit. And of course, one of the questions we ask while you are submitting the entries is, why do you think this woman should be celebrated? And we look at that. So after the entries, we have a panel that sits to look at what people have submitted, as well as compare it with information out there. We use their social media platforms to see what they're doing. We see what's in the news about them. We ask questions about people that may know them, and finally we drill it down to 100. This particular year, we got about 3,000 nominations, 3,000 plus nominations. So it's a lot of work.
From how many countries?
Come from about 13 countries. Whoa. From about 13 countries. Of course, Nigeria, the Gambia, Kenya, South Africa, Rwanda. That's the names I remember. Sierra Leone. So just across these countries, and it's our commitment, to continue to spread greatness, in Africa, by not just celebrating the icons, by empowering women, by celebrating women to inspire other women, as well. And for the event, the Peak Performing Woman of the Year that is coming up, it's not just the awards that is happening. There is the summit, which is where women will be learning how to acquire certain skills that will help them to deliver peak performance in the work that they do.
You're going to tell us those details of the awards and those other upcoming events with venue, date, and time. But a quick one: what does the Peak Performing Woman of the Year 2023 get?
Okay.
What's in it for why should it mean anything to a woman? Let me not say me because I'm not a woman. Why should it mean anything to any woman that you've been selected as a peak performing woman?
Okay. I think the population in Africa right now should be in the bracket of 500 million people. From what we know, a greater chunk of that are women. The women population is more than men. And so for you to be nominated, to be part of the 3,000 plus women that other people, not us, that other people feel that you deserve to be celebrated because of the work that you do, I think that is greatness. Now, further drilling it down to being part of 100 out of hundreds of millions of women across the continent spotlighting you, that is some great thing. The other thing is, of course, there is the award plaque that we give, but beyond that, it's about telling their stories, sharing their stories some more. We're looking at a situation where we continue to build this to a stage where the peak performing women of the year, would have maybe $100,000 to support their business, to support their careers or whatever interest that they have to continue to contribute to the society. But we are not there yet, but we're building, towards getting there. That we're not just putting the spotlight, we're not just sharing your story, we're also looking at how to enable what the woman is already doing, to make life easy for that woman.
Maybe then you will have more people identifying as women. But before we get to that one, tell us about this, the Peak Performing Woman of the Year 2023, the summit, the exhibition, and the awards.
Okay, so it's holding on the 23rd of June.
Come to the date. Give us the meat of the matter.
The meat of the matter.
The summit,
okay,
the exhibition,
and the awards. Okay, so the theme for the program is embracing equity for peak performance. And we say peak performance, not low performance, not average performance, but the peak performance, to be on the top of the chain. So there'll be a summit where women will be learning more about the skills necessary to achieve peak performance, not just average performance. And for us, peak performance is something beyond what you've achieved before. No matter what you did last year, for example, that people celebrated you, you were maybe the best in it. We're saying that in the new year, that performance has become mediocre because you need to elevate it, you need to take it higher. So what are the new things, that you need to learn? What are those foundational things as well that you need to know? Deepening your technical skills, also learning more about what some people call soft skills that we call peak performance skills, sharpening your communication skills, learning about emotional intelligence as an entrepreneur, how to apply emotional intelligence in leading your team, and of course growing the profits of your business as well, how to be more productive as a woman. Those are some of the themes that women will be learning on that day, at the summit. Yes, okay. At the summit. And of course for the exhibition, women-focused brands and women-owned businesses, will come around for the exhibition to showcase their business and their products and their services for other women to see, for all the people that will be there to see. They will make some money, they will get to know about their business, some more. And the crescendo is...
Just before you go to the awards, are we to look forward to any innovative products or ideas at the exhibition, things that are very wowing, if I can use it that way?
Great question. We will be seeing what some women are doing with fintech, at the exhibition. We'll be seeing what some women are doing with fintech at the exhibition. We'll be seeing what some women are doing with beauty and fashion, at the exhibition. I mean, it's nothing like you've ever seen before.
Those who are wondering, you see the beauty and fashion that you talked about, where they change one person to another person, and then anyway.
I think you have some fascinating insights about this changing, identifying. You've been saying
I'm the one asking the questions. So, yes, the awards.
Yes, and so the crescendo is the awards in the evening, where we will be celebrating 100 women across across multiple industries, across generations, and across countries. Women are coming in, from all over, from Kenya, from South Africa, from the Gambia. Women are coming in from all over to be celebrated.
Okay. Well, just a very, very quick one. I understand that we have an interesting one happening at the valedictory session, I think, of the Senate happening today, which we want to give you just a sneak peek before the conversation continues. The National Assembly, the House of Representatives has had its own session, a valedictory session. I think the Senate is having its own today, but we'll bring you more of that as soon as we have some other information, just so that we can bring you something for you to even see and perhaps possibly even hear a little bit of what we have. Okay, I think we're back now. All right, Linda, thank you for joining us this morning. So give us an idea of what's happening right now, how we're preparing for this, how far so far, and what are we to expect?
Yes. Yeah, good morning. So we are right inside the Senate chamber in the National Assembly, where the Senate is getting ready to hold its valedictory session, signifying the end of the 9th Senate. The House of Representatives held its own session on Wednesday. As you can see, the Senate chamber is gradually getting filled up as lawmakers are entering into the Senate chamber. Behind me is the former Senate leader, Senator Abdullahi Yaya, all seated, getting ready for the valedictory session. And we expect a whole lot of security to be around the Senate chamber because, as you know, the Vice President, Mr. Kashim Shettima, is a senator, as well as the First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, who may be attending this final session alongside some senators who are now governors and deputy governors. So typically, a valedictory session is a time when lawmakers recount their experiences in the last 4 years. They talk about the major achievements of the Senate, goodwill messages, a whole lot. And then we expect some former senators will be attending these senators also with their goodwill messages. So it's going to be a time of a lot of speeches, reminiscing, and conversations among these senators.
I'm pretty sure you would like to ask the senator right beside you a question or two, because it'll be good to find out from them, and as many of them as we can within the brief time we have, how does it feel for them to be having this valedictory session now, having spent 4 years in this particular 9th Assembly, what their experiences have been, and what they're looking forward to.
Okay, Senator Abdullahi, how does it feel? It's 4 years of the 9th Senate. This is the final day. How do you feel today? What are you most proud of?
Well, the first thing I will say is to thank Allah for making me able to see this day, healthy and with some strength still inside me. For me, it looked like yesterday, after 4 years, when we came, we think that 4 years is a long time, but apparently it is not. Normally events like this are very memorable events in which friendship has been struck for 4 years, people that you come to know and work with for 4 years. This is a life-sustaining kind of moments, because there are some people who you never knew before, but within these 4 years we have established bonds of friendship which will last for the rest of our lives. So for me, I'm very happy, that you are all here. Of course we lost 1 or 2 along the way, but most of us are alive and around and also healthy. Those who are coming back and those who are not, this bond of friendship has been established, I think, for the rest of our lives. So for me, it's a very emotional moment, but also a moment of gratitude, to Allah for the masses and the love, He has shown us all. For this 9th Senate, I can say without any fear of contradiction, whatever other people's opinions and views are, I think it's the most productive Senate, that has been there. History is going to absorb this particular 9th Senate for the monumental legislations and for the kind of changes that they made into governance and the contribution that they made in the sustenance of democracy in these 4 years. And God is there. And I think in the annals of Nigerian history, this Senate is going to be remembered what it has done to Nigerians. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Yaya. So that is Senator Abdullahi Yaya, the former Senate leader. So you have, as you can see, more senators are coming into the hall. We're expecting the Senate President and the leadership to come into the Senate chamber in a couple of minutes.
Well, Linda, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure that within the shortest possible time, we'll be getting back to you. Now that they are coming in, I'm assuming that the session will kick off in a few minutes or at the top of the hour?
In a few minutes.
Okay.
We're just waiting for the Senate President and the leadership to come into the Senate chamber.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Linda Akigbe, my colleague in Abuja, the Senate chamber right now for that reporting. We're waiting on you for the takeoff of that session. Well, that's Linda Akigbe giving us a quick update on the valedictory session of the 9th Senate. We've had that of the House of Representatives earlier in the week, and today the President of the Senate and his colleagues, along with the Vice President, who is a serving senator, and the First Lady, who is also a serving senator. Should I say was? I don't know. Let's get back to this conversation. Dr. Salami is still here with us talking about the peak performing woman. Well, will the First Lady be getting an award? Don't answer that question. So, you know, so the awards, I mean, you've spoken about it quite, you know, joyfully and cheerfully, and you've spoken about the inspiration. What day is it going to happen? Where is it going to happen? And all of those things.
Okay, great. And as part of the awards, before answering that question, we will be launching what we call the Peak Performing Woman's Companion, which is a life guide for women entrepreneurs, for women who are career professionals, and those who are passionate about nation building, right? So we'll be launching that at the awards. It's called the Peak Performing Woman's Companion. And so it's holding on Friday, the 23rd of June, 2023. The venue is the Muson Center. The time is 9 a.m. prompt on that day. No African time. It's 9 a.m. prompt, you know, on that day, you know. And we're calling on all women, every woman, no matter how old you are, no matter the profession that you have found yourself, no matter which country you're from, so far you are African, we're calling on everybody to come around for a time of inspiration, a time of celebration, a time of connection with people as well.
So, is it going to be streamed live or anything? It's just at the venue. Okay,
so there are those who will want to attend virtually. You know, there's a provision for that. Everyone should just go to the website, you know, to register.
Which website?
You know, so it is www.thepeakperformer.africa/woman-summit. When I said www, I saw a smile on your face. I think we both know. We both know why you smiled. But I think I want to take that website again, you know, for the viewers. It is www.thepeakperformer.africa/woman-summit. You know, and then when you go there, you register to attend. If you want to attend virtually, you can drop your details there. If you want to come in person, you can drop your details there. And there's no excuse. You know, we say that even if you are not in Lagos, you can attend virtually. If you're on the budget, we have sponsored.
So this is your website?
Right there, yes.
Okay.
Right there, the Peak Performer.
All right, so just go to that website. You'll be able to get all the information you need. Register. Now, this event is for women, not those who identify as women. Just am I?
It's for women.
Women,
not those who identify as women. You know, and I think you have it. Well, you said you're the one asking the questions. I would have asked you, you know, about your thought. You seem to have a thought around.
Well, since you're not asking me that question, we can just as well close the conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Abiola Salami is the convener at the Peak Performer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That website again, thepeakperformer.africa/woman-summit.
Yes.
Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much.
So we're back right after now. We spoke about the fact that sickle cell is not a death sentence the other time. More on that when we return from this break. Stay with us. Sickle cell is not a death sentence, so don't be afraid. Well, that's because we're bringing that on because World Sickle Cell Anemia Day is celebrated on June 19 every year, and sickle cell anemia is defined as a group of inherited red blood cell disorders. So sickle cell disorder is by far the commonest inherited disorder in the world, and 3/4 of cases occur, unfortunately, in Africa. In Nigeria, it affects 2 out of every 100 children born and causes suffering for innumerable patients and their families. But despite its importance, until now, there's been no dedicated sickle cell center in Africa. It's partly because the very scale of the problem makes it difficult to see how to start. Let's have this conversation this morning with 2 ladies with us. Mrs. Ayota Igbe is a director of Sickle Cell Foundation, retired as director of nursing at the Nigerian Ports Authority. She's also head of Department Genetic Counseling, Sickle Cell Foundation. She's a trainer of counselors all over Africa. Thank you so much for your time this morning. As well as Mrs. Modukwe Olakpade Bupola, who is coordinator of Ifako Sickle Cell Club in Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
We've seen the data, Mr. Otaigwe. How bad is it? 2 out of every 100 children born. Is this the official figure, or this is the reality?
It's a reality. About 150,000 babies are born every year in Nigeria who have sickle cell anemia.
150,000?
Yes.
Every year?
Yeah, Nigeria has the highest number of people with sickle cell disorder in the whole world by virtue of our population anyway.
Okay. And do you think, how concerning is that reality?
How
concerning, how much of a concern is it?
For
yes.
You know, before now, I would say awareness is a bit better now, but even a lot of people are not even aware of what sickle cell is. When they have their babies, they don't know they should test the babies for hemoglobin genotype. So, like abroad, where they do newborn screening, you easily pick up those who have sickle cell disorder, and the treatment is taken over, the management is taken over, and they survive better, because the earlier it is diagnosed, the better for that child. They will be under specialists who know about, doctors who know about sickle cell disorder, we call them hematology, either for pediatrics or for adult, children and adults.
Okay. Mr. Olakpade-Popola,
yes,
talking about awareness, how much do people know? What do you know about how people approach the problem of sickle cell disorder? Rightly or wrongly?
Thank you. I think there has been a lot of awareness. Years back it wasn't so. But in the dispensation that we are now, a lot of awareness is actually going on. Like when you talk about the Red Umbrella Walk, it's to create awareness.
and you find out that most people coming together, warriors, not only people, we call ourselves warriors. I happen to be a champion because of my age, and when we come together and we do the work, people see us and while doing it, we are able to propagate and say the reason why we are doing this is to create awareness. In my locality, even where I am as a coordinator, there's a lot of awareness. We keep increasing in number. We talk to the parents, we advise them, and these are ways by which we create the awareness. When you talk about the number of people that are aware, not so many, because the awareness, I will say, just is the awareness started not as expected before, but now there's a lot of it that is going on.
Now, for those who don't know, Mrs. Totagbe says, 150,000 are born every year with the condition. That means that those who are still alive now and have been going at it for quite some time, it must be quite something. How does one know? How do you diagnose the sickle cell disorder in the body? How do people know that, I think there's something here we need to give attention to?
Let me answer that.
Okay.
By seeing a child or a person, you can't just see it on the forehead that is. Even there are times who may be ill as children. When we do their genotype, you will see some are AA, but unless a laboratory test is done on hemoglobin genotype, that is when you can know whether somebody is SS or AA or A. There are over 1,000 types of hemoglobin genotypes, but the one common with us is just AA, AS, SS, SC, there are not many, AC, there are not many. So it's only by doing a hemoglobin genotype test in a renowned laboratory, because we have a lot of errors in the diagnosis of hemoglobin genotype.
So people can be easily misdiagnosed?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the signs or symptoms of sickle cell disorder?
Like when a child is born now, at times within the first few months, maybe 3-4 months, the baby may start having fever. Some of them can become anemic, that is, they have shortage of blood. In Nigeria, because we don't do newborn screening, most places, unless a child is 6 months or 1 year before some laboratory can diagnose it, but our lab in the center, National Sickle Cell Center of Sickle Cell Foundation, Nigeria, has a world-class lab recognized by WHO. So we can diagnose correctly the hemoglobin genotype. When there are controversies over genotype, they refer them to our lab. So we have even started doing newborn screening. It's one of the services we do now. When a child is born, within 72 hours, if they come to us, we can know whether the baby has sickle cell. So the baby may be anemic at times at 6 months, when the hemoglobin F, what we call hemoglobin F, that gives them immunity when they are a baby is newly born, it may not have show signs of sickle cell or infection or anything. You will see after 6 months, some may have swollen hand and feet. We call it hand-foot syndrome. They will not know. In those days, they will be beating the house up. The parents will be beating at that. Maybe they fell down the child when the awareness was not as much as this. It's when they test that child, they will say, it's SS. But these days, that's why we have been advocating that Nigeria should start newborn screening program. If newborn screening program, they are diagnosed early, it is better for the children. So you can't know unless you do it. And those are the signs that they show anemia or the hand-foot syndrome. They are having infection frequently. Those are some of the signs.
Okay. Now, from apparently, for the World Sickle Cell Anemia, it seems that you have a number of activities lined up.
Yes, there are activities lined up. And why did we choose sickle cell disorder as not a death sentence? Because of the myths and misconceptions that people have about sickle cell disorder. Is to dispel those myths that they die early, they die young, they die. When they are well looked after, they can actually live long.
Well, perhaps the reason some people say it's a death sentence is because of the excruciating pain that those who have the condition.
Many people believe that they die early, they don't live long.
Oh, wow.
They don't live long. Look at her now, she's 64, 65. So like 2 days ago.
You can't tell me that she has any...
That is what we are saying, because the care they receive is very important.
And I chip in.
And thank God for Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria.
I will say my mother, the role of a mother in the life of children matters a lot. And I keep giving kudos to my mom today. I think I was diagnosed when I was 5 months. And that was at UCH, Ibadan, then. And ever since then, my mother took it upon herself to say, even though they say they die, this one God gave me, she's not going to die. And I will say that really made me who I am today. Because if she had taken what was given to her as a word and then act on it, she wouldn't take proper care of me like she did.
Do you have a special diet?
I wouldn't say a special diet.
I just wanted to be sure of that.
No, okay. Not really.
Okay, so let's talk about this.
Let me talk about the lineup.
Yes, the
okay. We have a school quiz. We had it already last week, Thursday, 1st of June, was the school quiz. Then we are going to have press briefing, which is coming up. We are going to address the World Sickle Cell Day program and services provided by Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria with the press. So it is coming up on Wednesday, the 14th of June.
Okay.
At the Sickle Cell Center, Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, opposite Lute. The time is 11 a.m.
Okay.
So we are going to have a Red Umbrella Sickle Cell Walk, the one she mentioned, on Saturday, the 17th of June. The start and end point is Alhaji Masha, local government headquarters, Alhaji Masha. That's where we start, that's where we will end. So all is to take...
All of this is in Lagos?
In Lagos, Alhaji Masha.
Okay.
Lagos.
Okay.
So it's to create...
Just so some people are not looking for Masha in Kano. I just wanted to...
Yes, thank you for that. And also we are going... There's blood donation drive. You know, we encourage people to donate blood. You know, some people with sickle cell anemia may set in that is shortage of blood and they will need blood. Yeah. So there's blood donation drive too on that day. Then after that we have our flagship event, which is the public lecture, which is coming up on the 20th of June. It's a Tuesday, 20th of June, 2023, going to take place at the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, opposite Lute, Idiaraba, Surulere, Lagos. And the time is 10:30 a.m. So we are privileged to have panelists of renowned professors of hematology and pediatrics that will lecture that day. So we are inviting everybody. The venue is still Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, opposite Lute, Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay.
So
okay, go ahead.
I want to declare here that Sickle Cell Foundation is the only foremost NGO for the sickle cell disorder in the whole of Nigeria. And also, the Sickle Cell Center of Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria is the only comprehensive center in the whole of Africa.
Wow.
And Sub-Saharan Africa had the highest burden of sickle cell. Either you are sickle cell trait, which is carry out the gene, or you have sickle cell disorder. We have the highest. Over 40 million Nigerians have sickle cell trait, which is hemoglobin genotype AS.
Wow.
You hear, you hear
40
that?
40 million Nigerians.
over 40 million. So Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria is the foremost NGO that's really addressing the problem of sickle cell disorder.
Okay. And
also the National Sickle Cell Center, as I said, the only comprehensive center in the whole of Africa. And we are the people too. The Sickle Cell Foundation is the only organization that organizes training for health professionals on genetic counseling and on the management of sickle cell disorder in the whole of Africa. Other African countries come for the training. They send their health professionals, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, psychologists. We are the only people training people. Sierra Leone, Uganda, Ghana, Cameroon, Rwanda, to name a few, they've benefited from the training. And the Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria supports government in implementing policy on sickle cell disorder. And our services, Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria services, cover all aspects of sickle cell disorder, from prevention to treatment to care.
Are all of this information, are they available on the Sickle Cell Nigeria website?
Yes, they are available on our website. They are available on our website. And there are other line of services.
Sure they will be able to get this information on your website, right?
I will explain. I will just mention them. In case genetic counseling is there, transcranial Doppler. Have you heard of it? Brain scan to detect children who are at high risk of having stroke. 2 to 16 years of children with hemoglobin cells can have stroke. Not all of them. Prenatal diagnosis to tell the baby in the womb between 10 weeks and 12 weeks. We were the people that started it in Africa in 1993. We are still doing it up to today. Newborn screening, I've said we have started. I've talked about our lab. Then we have Legosa. We dress a Legosa there too.
Okay.
And then we do blood. There's automated machine that does HN blood transfusion. Within few hours, it can do HN blood transfusion. With maybe 8 bottles of blood, and instead of using manual of those days. Okay. So they send people from other states to benefit from that. Bone marrow transplant center,
Okay.
We are going to take off very soon.
All right. Let me ask you this, Mrs. Olakwade. You still give us the details of the event one more time. But let me ask you, Mrs. Olakwade Bukola, for mothers who are raising children now, tell us what you think their experiences are when their children have to have this experience, and what would you advise them to do immediately?
Yeah. For mothers, most of them, the first instance when the crisis starts, you see them, they start to shiver because they are afraid. And a lot has been instilled into them about sickle cell disorder itself. And that's why we are saying it's not a death sentence. The proper thing for them to do immediately when you see, and that's what we inculcate into them at the clinics. We have our doctors that comes there to educate. I'm always there at the meeting to give them the morale that they need, that if I can make it, their children can make it. It only depends on how you handle your children. We have the do's and the don'ts. Yes. Don't sit down at home and say you are treating them. No self-medication when the crisis is setting. Go to the hospital. Take them to the hematologist where they can attend to them. They are normal routine drugs. You don't escape it. Make sure they take it. It's on a daily basis. And this medication is for a lifetime. So you find out that if you put all this in practice, you do what you are supposed to do as a mother. Handle them as if they are AA children. There shouldn't be any kind of segregation and say, no, you don't do. No. That shouldn't be.
Okay.
If you do that, you find out that they will lie under it and say, I'm a sickle cell patient.
How about the case Mrs. Otaibe mentioned the other time about misdiagnosis?
Yeah.
Some people, as you said, would have gone to hospital and would have been told, you know, one thing or the other, only to find out that it's something else. Yes. What do parents do now?
There has been a lot of fights in homes in respect and regards of this. If I need to cite a series of examples, there's one that they were really diagnosed. The wife, maybe the wife was diagnosed as AS. The man says it's AA. So how come the AS? Yes. The best you can have is AS, genotype child. And then you end up having an SS. Is either the man that will say, okay, you haven't done it right. Maybe something is wrong somewhere. And then the wife will say, okay, no, it's not me. I don't know, whatever and whatever. The best thing to do at that time that I advise is go to the foundation. The Sickle Cell Foundation is the best place I recommend for people to go for their genotype test. Because you find out that everything that needs to be done will be done perfectly, because it's one of the things they do. There are so many labs all over the place that you find out that they give fake results to prospective couples or parents, and it's always causing a lot of row in the family when it is finally detected that something is wrong in the family. We have men running away from their wives that will leave the child and say, I don't know where you brought the child from, because of this error in diagnosis, in genotype, whatever it is. So it's not been easy to actually settle this kind of rift between husband and wife. Essentially, but when they go to the foundation for counseling, I think they've been able to diffuse their mind.
Well, I said the other time that the information that Mr. Tagbe was giving us has to be on their website, where you can get there now, sicklecellfoundation.com. Yeah, it's that simple. That's it. All of the information you need about Sickle Cell Foundation is right there on the website on your screen right now that you're looking at. And all the things that you need to, basic information about sickle cell disorder, what it means, and the services that the Sickle Cell Foundation offers, as Mr. Tagbe has been trying to give to us, you will also find out. But this information is very, very, very important, because, hey, all we want is peace in the home. Just a quick one again, Mr. Tagbe, you were telling us that the World Sickle Cell Anemia Day is celebrated on June 9 every year, June 19 every year.
Yes.
And there is an event that's held already, 1st of June.
Yes.
The quiz has happened. You said that the World Press Conference, you called it? It's on Wednesday next week?
Press briefing.
It's on Wednesday next week.
It's on Wednesday.
At the Sickle Cell Foundation at Luth. The Red Umbrella Walk is on what day and what time?
17th of June.
17th of June is a Saturday from 7 to 2 p.m.
7 a.m. to 2 p.m.
7 a.m. to 2 p.m. And you've also talked about a public lecture on the 20th?
20th of June, Tuesday.
All of these are happening at the Sickle Cell Foundation.
Yes.
At Luth in
except the work that is on is for local government.
Okay.
Headquarters, Alhaji Masha, Surulere, Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay. We have to thank you very much, ladies, for being here this morning, because and the fact that you even are sure that, man, you're 64 years old now.
Yeah. I'm going to be 65 in November.
So you are practically 65. Okay. Happy birthday.
Something happened on Wednesday.
Okay.
A woman came, the child was error in diagnosis for the child. It was giving AS instead of SS. So a doctor referred them to our lab. And we found, because the child at 8 years, they had stroke.
Wow.
And they were thinking it's AS. Because
at 8 years?
8 years. And I say 2 to 16 years, some of them can have stroke. So, but when we do transcranial Doppler scans, brain scan in the layman's language, we're able to identify those who are at high risk of having stroke, and we put them on management to prevent stroke from happening. So stroke can be prevented.
Okay. Well, so many things to unpack in all of this. Please go and consume all the information on that website, sicklecellfoundation.com. Thank you so much for being here. Mrs. Ayo Tagbe is the director of Sickle Cell Foundation Nigeria, as well as Mrs. Modupe Olakpade Kukwala, coordinator of Ifakoja, a sickle cell club in Lagos. Thank you so much for your time as well, and all the best to you. We're back right after now. Let's talk about sleep. We'll be back. On Lifestyle Today, let's ask you that question. Do you know what happens when you sleep? Okay. This morning, we want to tell you what happens when you sleep, because lack of sleep, it's associated with so many negative consequences. Risk of heart disease, depression, weight gain, inflammation, sickness, you name it. In fact, in a pre-interview conversation this morning, we heard that you could actually be responsible for mental health, lack of mental health. You know what? Let's just get into the conversation this morning with Dr. Chris Aboje, who is a clinical psychologist. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's begin with that controversy. Motivational speakers tell people that, why are you smiling? You don't even know what I want to say. That, you need to burn the midnight oil. You don't, if you want to be prosperous, you want to succeed, you burn the midnight oil. You don't sleep all the time. Successful people don't sleep all the time. Help us understand that.
So, well, I would say that they mean well. They mean well. However, I also think that many people don't understand what happens during sleep. So they think that sleep is just you doing nothing and it's a waste of time. But that's not true. I think for most motivational speakers, they are actually trying to motivate people to be disciplined.
Not to be lazy.
Not to be lazy. But they need to understand that sleep is actually important for productivity. So if you really want to be successful, you need to be able to sleep adequately, right? And I think that's what they should understand.
But I'm pretty sure we have an award for the longest sleep hours, but I'm not talking about that now. But let's help us understand that, first of all. What happens when a human being sleeps?
Well, so there's a lot that happens during sleep. If you were to summarize it, you would say that sleep is important for restoration of your physical and mental well-being. But there are different stages to sleep. So there's, what we call the non-rapid eye movement. That's the NREM sleep, which is divided into 3 stages. The first stage is when you start to get into light sleep. Your body starts to relax. And then you move beyond that stage to when your brainwaves activities reduce, heart rate reduces. But the third stage is usually the very important stage. It is when you then find out that your tissues start to get repaired. Brain activities also slows down at that point. But a lot of physical restoration happens during this stage. The other form of type of sleep is what we call the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep. This is usually the point where people are having dreams or nightmares. But it's also a very important stage because it's where you have cognitive and emotional regulation. So in that stage of sleep, what you see is that your body starts to help you store memories. The things that happen during the day helps you sort out a lot of things, and it leads to improved cognitive abilities. Now, this is why you see that we say that dreams are born out of the activities of the day, and they are not necessarily somebody chasing you from somewhere or the earth. Because
it's not spiritual all the time.
It's not spiritual all the time because it's important for your total well-being. Now, but if you look at all the stages, they are cumulatively important for both your physical and your mental well-being.
Speak to how it affects mental health.
Oh, yes. So, like I did mention earlier, that sleep is important for emotional regulation. And when you think about mental health is basically 3 things. It's your cognitive well-being, your thoughts, your ability to process information, your ability to regulate your emotions, and of course your ability to respond adequately. Now, when people don't sleep adequately, of course, emotional regulation is affected. Cognitive functioning also is affected. Some people will talk about forgetting things. Some people will talk about finding it difficult to concentrate. But mostly the emotional part of it is also very important. So you see that people find it difficult to control their emotions. They even experience intense negative emotions, which over time can lead to things like depression, can even lead to increased anxiety, especially because if they don't understand what is happening to them, they are likely going to interpret it as catastrophe, and those things accumulate over time. In the clinics, for example, we realized that one of the questions we ask people when they walk in is, how has your sleep been? Because we've seen that for most mental illnesses, the early onset or the early signs, usually one of them is sleep. There's going to be a problem with sleep. Either they're sleeping too much or they're sleeping too little. And so if we can find that somebody comes in and says, oh, everything is fine, but my sleep is not adequate, that tells us that there's a problem. And if the person doesn't watch it, can lead to an eventual mental breakdown.
So you're saying too much sleep is an abnormality?
Yes.
Too little sleep is an abnormality?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to us about the too much. We'll come to the too little. Talk to us about the too much sleep. What sleep is too much sleep?
Well, so there are what we call sleep disorders, and I'll get there in a bit. But we have been able to classify the duration of sleep that is adequate into hours, even though I'm not a strong fan of those classifications. But they would say that for adults, between 7 and 8 hours is adequate sleep, right? That means that if you find yourself sleeping excessively more than that, there could be a problem. But the key thing for me is, how do you feel when you wake up? That's the key thing. It's not necessarily the number of hours that you sleep, it's how do you feel? Do you feel rested? Or do you feel stressed? Do you feel pain? Do you have headaches? Do you feel, tired even though you've slept, right? In so many people, when they begin to sleep so much, it could be because, again, they might be experiencing some emotional difficulties or challenges, and they are using sleep as a coping mechanism, right? So it's like comfort sleeping. You just want to sleep and forget all your problems, basically. But we know that that's a problem. Now, of course, there's a kind of disorder called narcolepsy, where that also is linked to excessive sleeping. In fact, some people experience sudden sleep. So as I'm gisting with you now, I could just, fall asleep, right? So, but that's a disorder.
If you do that, we'll just cut to commercial.
That is a disorder that needs adequate intervention.
Okay. How about insomnia?
Yeah.
Some people, well, you've spoken to it the other time. Some people, well, they sleep to get over their sorrows. Some cannot sleep with their sorrows. Owing a bank or EFCC came knocking the other day. Some people literally lose their sleep, or there's been some traumatic experience. You just discovered something about your child or your spouse or your parents. You lose your sleep. It's not that you don't want to sleep. You just can't sleep.
Yeah. So insomnia, which is difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, right, can be linked to a number of things. It can be linked to stress. It can be linked to emotional distress, like you've just talked about. The way I like to describe it so that it becomes very simple is that, imagine if someone came to you and said to you that the roof was on fire, right? You were just about to sleep. You realize that sleep disappears. The last thing you want to do at that point is to sleep. Now, that example illustrates when you're going through a difficult experience or an emotional distress like this. What you see is that your body tries to prepare you to be able to deal with that. And one of the ways you deal with it is through thinking about the problem and figuring out a solution. Most of that happens when you are less distracted. Of course, during the night when you're about to sleep. So your brain starts to run through thoughts. How do I solve this? During that point, there's a little bit increased body metabolism. So you find out that it might be difficult for you to sleep at that particular time, which can then lead to insomnia. But there are other things. Medications also can lead to that. But the key thing for us is finding out why. Why am I not able to sleep? Is it that I'm thinking a lot? What am I thinking about? Am I thinking about a problem? I will say to people, write it down and then talk to somebody about it or try to fix it, other ways than just thinking. Because thinking alone might not, was it one of these musicians that says that overthinking will solve problem? It will solve your problem, but what it does is it helps you identify the problem, and then you should should be able to direct it into solution or problem focused approach in dealing with the challenge.
So how about those, okay, you talked about, maybe you want to talk about this as part of the sleeping disorder that you wanted to mention to us the other time, because there are those who don't have any problems. They don't have EFCC coming after them. They don't have any traumatic experience. There's no roof on fire, and they can't just find sleep on time.
Well, so that is very rare, but it does happen, and it could be linked to medical concerns, right? So I would say to those kind of people, hey, go to the clinic, talk to your doctor, do your test, run, your examinations, and find out if there is any reason why that is happening, right? So that could be due to a medical concern. That could also be due to stress, physical stress, Even though stress is good for us, but at some level, it could even affect your general functioning, including your sleep as well. But most times, there might, from the psychological perspective, there could be a psychosocial factor that triggers the sleep. If it's not medical, if it's not physical, then it's likely going to be psychosocial.
Talked about how many kinds of sleep disorders do we have? How do you know the one that you have?
There are a number of them. I mentioned, we just talked about insomnia. There's also what I talked about earlier, which is narcolepsy. There is the restless leg syndrome, where you're sleeping and your leg is restless. There are all those.
Oh, that's a disorder.
That's a
sleep disorder.
That's a sleep disorder.
So your body doesn't totally rest.
Yes, exactly. But there's one that I really like to talk about because of being a Nigerian, which is sleep paralysis. And the reason why I talk about that is because many people have associated that to demonic possession or attack. Imagine, so just picture this. Those nights when you wake up and you find out that you are conscious, but you cannot move your body. And then you then finally shout blood of Jesus and say, thank God. That is an example of sleep paralysis. So what really happens is that when we go to bed, our body secretes...
Slow down when you're talking about this. Okay. Somebody is watching you and saying, you mean it is not demonic?
It's not.
After how many bottles of olive oil and how many kegs of holy water? So
yes. So after all that you've done, and even though you say, but why is it that when I shouted blood of Jesus, I now woke up? Let me explain. So when we go to bed, our body secretes chemicals that paralyzes us for a reason, so that we are not acting out our dreams. And if you think about it, some people have been accused of witchcraft because they were acting out their dreams, in some years back. So what happens is the body does that. Now, when you then find this person coming back to the wakeful state, the state of consciousness, the body still remains paralyzed, and that's what happens during sleep paralysis. But you're conscious. Now, what we always say is just relax, allow it. Your body will get back. It will regulate itself, and you get back to normal. It's the anxiety that is really the problem, because people think, am I going to die? Is the devil really attacking me? In fact, the fact that you can shout blood of Jesus means the body has regulated itself, and there are many things that could lead to that. Stress, again, number one culprit that can lead to sleep paralysis. You could also find that use of some medications can also lead to sleep paralysis. Trauma, substance use, sometimes abuse can also lead to sleep paralysis.
What kind of substance?
Good news. Substance abuse, like alcohol, for example, hard substances like marijuana, coke, crack, any of the substances can also lead to that. The good news is that more than 90% of the time, sleep paralysis is harmless, right? That's the good news. It's harmless if it's not attributed to a medical cause. If it's not attributed to a medical cause, more than 90% of the time, it's harmless. So the real problem with sleep paralysis is not the sleep paralysis itself, it's the anxiety that follows it. Is that, am I going to die tonight?
So you don't blame anyone for thinking that, because, okay, so the question I want to ask along that line is, okay, so if sleep paralysis is a safety mechanism of the body, how about sleepwalking? Is it that the paralysis is not strong enough?
Of course, the thing about the body is that there are different forms of abnormalities. You could have the excessive ones, you can have but the goal behind the process that might lead to a sleep paralysis is designed to prevent things like sleepwalking or sleep talking or sleep acting or whatever it is. Imagine you're dreaming about your girlfriend and you're acting it out. People will start casting and binding you while you're sleeping. So it's designed to prevent some of those things. But in some cases, that process might not be adequate enough or might not function as it's required, and that could lead to cases like that.
Now, are there peculiarities of sleep conditions for certain ages or demographics?
Well, yes, maybe not cut out, but what we see is that as we get older, for example, we sleep less. You probably have noticed that, you sleep less than you used to sleep as a child.
Honestly, I sleep a lot more.
Okay. maybe that's good. There are people that are blessed that way. But that's why you see that for kids, we would say that, they require more hours of sleep. And as we grow older, the hours start to reduce. But that is not not out of place to see that as we go older, sleep, hours also reduce.
Why is that? Why is that?
Well, a number of reasons. A number of reasons could be stress induced, like we've mentioned.
Anxiety.
It could be, and you have a lot of bills to pay, you're thinking about that. But it could also be the fact that your body requires less sleep as you grow older than when you were younger as well. With kids, you're most likely going to see things like the sleepwalking, sleep talking more with kids than with adults as well. But when it comes to all the others, like the narcolepsy, we might not be able to really differentiate in terms of statistics or demography. But we know that sleep deprivation would happen more with older people. We also see that women also tend to struggle more with sleep, especially during the period of, when they start to give birth to kids. All that process can affect their sleep and wake cycle as well. Some people might say that for men, the more problem you have, that could also affect your sleep. But we see that men might find it easier to sleep than women actually, which is different from what people might expect generally.
So for those who are having certain peculiarities now, what would be your advice? There are those, of course, who can't sleep unless they've taken certain kinds of medication or even some concoctions.
Yeah.
What would be the natural advice for them?
So I say that all those things, the concussions, the medications, they usually provide just short-term relief. They help you sleep for it, but it gets worse. It gets worse because, and that's why you see that no doctor will prescribe a sedative for longer than, say, 5 days, 9 days, for but usually a short duration of time because your body gets dependent on it. Develops what we call tolerance. You need more of it, and at some point it's no longer working, and that's what you see even with people who take alcohol and some of these other substances. So we usually recognize that, hey, yes, you might be prescribed some of this medication, don't take them for so long. If this problem persists, talk to a professional, and this is where your therapist comes in handy. Because it could be the result of any other thing, so you can deal with all these other problems, and if you are able to effectively deal with them, you'll be able to sleep better. If it's a medical condition, that also is identified and dealt with. We recommend what we call sleep hygiene. These are simple rules that could help improve your sleep. Okay. One of them is setting a routine, so that at so time I have to sleep. It's a way of conditioning your circadian rhythm, which is your biological clock, to know that when it's this time, I have to sleep. You also want to make sure that your environments where you sleep is conducive and calm enough to induce sleep as well. We say that you want to use your bed for two things, for sleep and intimacy, nothing else. And that means if you're legally allowed to do so, but apart from sleep and intimacy, don't use your bed for any other thing. Avoid things like carbonated drinks, caffeinated drinks, alcohol.
At all or before sleep?
So at least 4 to 3 hours.
Some people are fighting you right now just for even sleep.
Yeah, 4 to 3 hours before sleep. You need to stay away from them. And I say if you must take them in the morning, at least far from your bedtime.
Especially for children.
Especially for children. Children even have more capacity to handle some of those things than adults.
Because you give something sweet to a child before sleep time. Rarely I say up to you 4 hours after.
You are chasing them to sleep. Around. True. So stay away from those things. Have a routine that is relaxing. Maybe take a shower.
I was going to ask you just before you came up with that food thing. What's the best safe time to stop eating for different ages?
Well, so I would say for all ages, even though, so the thing about this is that it's quite debatable, but some people would say at least by 7 p.m., at 7 p.m., you should already, stop eating by that time.
But I've not even left the office at 7 p.m.
Exactly. So that's why I said it's debatable. That for some people, they've not even left the office. So, and you're telling them to stop eating at that point. They are still busy at that point. But there's a reason why. There's a reason why those rules are given. It's so that it allows your system enough time to process, digest, and of course prepare you for bed. And so what I would say is that if you are going to eat at any point you eat, just make sure that before it's time to sleep, give some hours gap before bedtime.
Okay, and wrapping up now. So when you talked about sleeping too much, you talked about inadequate sleep. How do we manage the balance? Sometimes some people sleep too much. Sometimes some people don't sleep enough. How do we handle the balance?
The key thing is finding out the why, right? Find out why. Why am I not getting enough sleep? Why am I sleeping too much, right? It's if you know the why and you can deal with the why, you're able to regulate that process. If you're sleeping as a comfort to the distress, a psychological distress you're going through, or emotional distress you're going through, then that's not the best approach, because yes, you can sleep, but the problem remains there. So you need to find a more rational approach to dealing with the problem. And for some people that are not able to sleep because they're exposed to stress, for example, or because they have some personal challenges that they're trying to figure out. Again, you need to make sure that whatever you're doing it intentionally, and you're not just allowing your body to direct how you go through life or how you function. Ask yourself why. What's been happening? Take an emotional log, for example, and ask yourself, okay, how have I been feeling? What's been going on in my life? Are there other ways I can fix it? Sometimes you find that simply talking to somebody can help you figure out how to handle that challenge and can then improve your sleep over time. So
in the event of, sometimes some things are difficult to talk to people about. You are unable to talk about whatever the issue is with anyone. And that means that the sleeplessness is going to continue.
Yes.
When is the sleep disorder a major concern for anyone to take seriously?
So first, before we even start to label it as a disorder, right, I think that it is not out of place for us to struggle with sleep maybe once in a while, right? Because life is not as straightforward every time. So from time to time, yes, you could struggle with sleep. But if this persists for a duration of time, so typically you've been struggling to sleep for, say, 2 weeks and above, right? That is enough for you to start asking yourself, hey, what's happening? Do I need to talk to somebody about it?
For 2 weeks. So
2 weeks.
Once
Yes.
it gets to up to 2 weeks.
Once you're not able to sleep for 2 weeks, that's significant. That's significant, and you need to take note of it and do something about it. Now, sometimes it could be because, say, for example, if you just lost someone, you may be able to explain why you've not been able to sleep. But we expect that at some point your sleep should start improving. If it's not improving, then there's a problem. Do not wait for so long. So that's the problem. Some people wait for so long before they even ask for help. I would say that if you notice that you're struggling to get adequate sleep for just the first 2 weeks, please speak to somebody about it. Start with your medical doctor, for example. And yes, they might prescribe some medication, but also you need to be careful that you're not now staying on the medication for so long, going to the pharmacy to get it yourself, because no doctor will prescribe it for so long. So because they expect that if it's just a normal distress, you should not regulate in a couple of days and be fine. But if that doesn't happen, go back, let them refer you to an expert, maybe a sleep expert or a psychotherapist, who can then help you deal with this effectively.
In the event that the sleeplessness is a function of work, what does this individual do? You have a timeline you've been struggling to meet. And it's like it's the certain times of every month that the person loses his or her sleep. That is one. Secondly, you just generally find it difficult sleeping because you have a workload that you're always thinking about. Would you advise that person to leave the job, or?
Not necessarily. The good thing is that the person even knows what the problem is. Okay. So that's the first place to start. So that's the good news. So for the person who says, oh, during this time of the month, I struggle sleeping. Now, again, it depends on how long are you struggling to sleep for. If it's a couple of days, that might not necessarily be a problem. You just need to be aware of it and plan towards it. To say, okay, you know what, once it's this time of the month, I might struggle with sleep because I have A, B, C, D to attend to. So I'm just going to create a plan that allows me to attend to that. But some other person who says, hey, it's my workload, and this is not just about a period in the month, it's like regular. I would say to the person is that, number one, you need to then be more intentional about your day and about your workload. So you start your day by actually planning. You know, say to yourself, what do I want to achieve today? Any activity that allows you to achieve that should be regarded as important. Now, if that activity is also urgent, those should be the first things you do every day. Okay. Now, the ones that are important but are not urgent, you can schedule them for later. Now, the ones that are not important but are urgent, you can ask someone else to do it for you, or you can negotiate it. But the other activities that are neither important and urgent, say no to them. If you can practice this would help you manage your time better, manage your energy better, and can also help you sleep better. And that means that in the list of activities, sleep should also be an important activity for you, so that you're not sacrificing sleep to do other things.
Do comedians sleep better? Don't ask them. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
For educating. I'd wanted us to talk about this sleep for a long time. Hopefully, if we have questions, if you do have questions, please send us an email. The information will be on your screen shortly. Then we can bring back Dr. Chris Aboje to answer some of those questions that you have. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Chris Aboje is a clinical psychologist. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Well, I think you already gave out who our guest is, but you don't know the fellow's name. We'll be right back. Suffice to say, I've not allowed my guest this morning to sleep for a while. So please welcome Idilioye Oluwaseitan Lawrence Aletile. More popularly known as Sheila. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Have I been allowing you to sleep well?
Well, I've always loved to sleep.
Because the first one of these, the fellow said that some people, as you grow older, you sleep less. Is that your experience as well?
Not for me. I try to always make sure that I keep it balanced. You know, I sleep when I want to. You know, sometimes my friends laugh at me because I can be in the club and I'll sleep.
Really?
I don't mind.
With all the noise?
Nothing stops my sleep. And I think that is one of the things that I'm grateful to God for.
So how do you manage your sleep cycle when you travel? Those 6-hour trips, 8-hour trips, and then time zones change?
Well, sometimes when I don't have the opportunity to sleep, you know, probably because of work or something, I always, you know, find a way around it later to make sure that I have the deserved rest that I needed. And I make sure that sometimes I have the deep sleep so that when I wake up, I'm feeling refreshed and I'm good to go any other time.
You don't allow your body to be in debit of sleep?
No, I don't give chance to that. I don't.
So thank you for being here this morning.
You're welcome.
How did comedy begin for you? I know this is a question you may have been asked for quite a number of times.
Yes, a lot of times. Comedy, you know, a lot of time I tell people that comedy chose me. I didn't choose comedy. You know, for those who probably schooled with me, they know that when it comes to book in quotes, I'm always very eager to learn. I'm like they say, sucker for knowledge. You know, I'm always searching for knowledge and all those stuff. But then, you know, there's just this aspect of my life that had to do with entertainment from when I was in primary school, secondary school. You know, we used to have something that they call social gathering because I was in the boarding house at some point. And so I always come up to do riddles and jokes, you know, like we used to do back in the days. And a teacher actually awoke that in me when I was in primary 3. We call him Double Akins. It's quite unfortunate. I don't know where he is. He's a man that I would have loved to see. You know, when I was in primary 3, he was a student teacher, the NYSC stuff, and he came to our school then to teach. And you know, he will always come up with different jokes before he started teaching to help us relax and laugh. And so I started telling those jokes to other people, you know. And
so you started with copyright, Shallow.
Yes. You know, and it was so, you know, that became a part of my life, you know. And then I took interest in acting. By the time I was in SS3, I had become, I was the president of the Cultural and Dramatic Club of my school. And then we formed a body then, Lagos State All Secondary School Cultural and Dramatic Club, and I became the first chairman. And I remember that a young girl from Holy Child, Yemisi Da Costa, I'll never forget her name. She was the vice president, and then we had the secretary and all the stuff. So we were trying to make sure that we have a body. We used to bring some of the actors to some of our major programs. And by the time I had finished secondary school, I wanted to study medicine, you know. And I remember at one point I scored 257 in JAM. At the other time I had 281. But somehow along the line, I guess my mom had some financial issues and I couldn't go on to study medicine. And one day I was doing the business center, phone call business center at the relay bus stop. And I had finished, I got home at about 11 p.m. in the night. And we saw a movie then, this program that he used to do on DBN, I think, Night Shift. And then there was a movie on Snow White and all those stuff. And when we finished, I did a joke from the movie. I said, I remember when we did the premiere of this movie, and then we had to be on the queue to stand in front of the magic mirror, and we were asking the mirror, who is the fairest of them, what is my number? And the mirror would look at you and say, oh, you are the 10,000 most finest person in the world, like that. And then our former president, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, stood in front of the mirror, and the mirror said, you are the second most handsome person in the world. And I said, if Chief Olusegun is the second, then definitely I'm number one. And so I just said, let everybody go. I went behind at the queue, like, no, people can go. The number one is here. And then when it got to my turn, I stood in front of the mirror, and the mirror started crying that your face is not even in our register of fine people. You know, I remember I did that joke, and my cousin was very impressed, and he said, you know, this thing that you always do at home, you make us laugh at home, do you know that people are making money from it? Okay, in about some few Sundays from now, we're having a program in a church. We'd like you to come follow us to that program and, you know, come and do this thing. Let people know that you can do it. Before then, I'd been into dancing and trying to get into the movie industry. I remember I used to trek from Orile to the National Art Theatre, the Artist Village.
It's not far now.
And we used to do that trekking, pass through white sand, you know. And I remember there is this comedian now who has just, probably a lot of people are just getting to know him, MC Danfo. We were, one day he wasn't Danfo then, we were at the Artist Village at the National Art Theatre, and the late uncle Sam Lokoife sent both of us on errand to get him a pack of cigarettes and a bottle of beer, you know. and that was one incident. This was in 2003. That was one incident that lived in my memory for a very long time. You know, remembering that I didn't really get to meet him after I became popular in the industry, but then that was the memory I had of him. That was the closest encounter I had with Sam Lokoife. And so in 2005, that happened. My cousin, they went to the church. We were going to perform in that church. They went to perform, and then when they introduced them, I went on stage and I cracked joke, and people were falling on their chairs. And you know, after I finished, a lady walked up to me. We are doing a program in our church next week. We would like you to come too. And then it was like, I said that you guys will have to pay something. And she said, can we give you 750? You know, 750 naira then was the amount of money that I would make if I was at my business center from morning till night. And so when somebody said that, can we give you 750? 750 naira. Just to come and do 10 minutes of performance. I was almost going crazy. My hair blew everywhere. You know, I was like, jeez. I ran to meet my cousin. My cousin said, 750.
It's cheap.
It's so cheap. I said, something that I will be at the bus stop from morning till night.
You still not be there.
Sometimes you don't even get to make it. I said, I know it's not cheap. And you know, I went to that church, I had that performance, and I met the MC then at that church, they call him MC Doggy, who later became Emeka Smith.
Wow.
You know, he was MC Doggy. I had chosen for myself, Shey Easy. You know, when I go on stage, I say, Shey Easy. People will say, no, easy. I say to say easy for no day here, they also. You know, those were some of my tagline when I started. And so one day, Emeka Smith, who was MC Doggy then, we had met, we became friends. He was very impressed with my performance, and he said, oh, let's host the event together. You know, and we did that event, we became friends. One day he called me and said, there is a program they are doing in his church that he would like me to come for that program and perform. But that day I didn't have money. And I was somewhere at McCollum Street in Ebute Metta. And I had to trek from McCollum. I had to leave early. He said the program would start for around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. Wow. And I had to leave McCollum at about 12 o'clock, 12 noon. I had to trek through Onyibo to Apapa Road to Nigeria Biriati Gomo, through to Orile, then Koka, and then to Link Aguda. You know, I trekked, got into that place. I had a palm slippers and a faded jeans and a blue shirt that I inherited from my brother. You know, and then when I got there, he took me to meet the other guys that they were organizing the event together. And while I stood by the chair where the guys are seated, he said, now the boy where they tell you now be this, they're very funny, this one and that. And you know, the organizer, the lead of that group, had looked at me from head to toe and was like, he looked at me. And the next statement he made was, this thing cannot climb our altar.
Wow.
You know, when he said that, I could have felt bad. But then, you know, I'm somebody who was well trained. You know, I remember this saying in Yoruba that the dustbin that refuses to take debt will never be full. You know, and so if you want to be full, a lot of debts will be thrown at you. So what do? The most important thing is when they throw the debt at you, just, you know, dust yourself off and become a better you. And like I always tell people, if you're prepared for an opportunity, when the opportunity comes, seize it and give your best at all time. And so later on during the course of the program, they were having some lapses. You know, they were waiting for the guest comedian to come, who was Jedi, to come. And so because he wasn't around at that time, So Berekon, the guy that produced Obodo Zenugo for Clean the Drunk, was drumming in the church. And so he was the one that looked at the guy and said, while we're waiting, let this boy just climb the stage and perform. And so then I gave me the opportunity to say, okay, let him just go. And when I was on that stage, Jerry came into the hall. And I was, you know, having a swell moment on stage. I'd had about 2 standing ovation in the course of my performance, and I had about 5 standing ovation in the course of that performance, because you know I was willing to seize that opportunity and I was prepared for it. And by the time I was done, Jedi ran on stage and he heard me, and he was like, "Man, this is something that is waiting to explode. Wow, this guy is an amazing talent," and he said all those stuff, and I was just saying, "Amen." And by the time we finished that program, they invited Jedi, but Jedi ended up putting his hand on my shoulder and walking towards his car. We walked to his car, and as we were going, he'd asked me, he said, you said your name now Shey Easy. What will be your Shey Easy? Shey Easy. That was what he said, Shey Easy. What will be your other name? I said, my name no be Shey. My name na Lawrence Idile. At that time, you know why I said comedy chose me? Let me tell you something that happened 2 weeks prior to that time. I was walking on the road, a man called me, was calling out to me, Oluwa Sheyitan, Oluwa Sheyitan. I didn't answer him. And then the man touched me. And he said, Oluwa Sheyitan. I said, oh God, my name no be Oluwa Sheyitan. Wow. And he said, that is your name. I looked at him, I just used to, you know, I just walk on like, who be this one? I said, my name no be Oluwa Sheyitan. He said, your name no Oluwa Sheyitan. And then 2 weeks after, when I met Jedi, and Jedi said, I think you say your name now Shey Easy. I said, no. He said, let it be your name. I said, Shey Easy. He said, I think say your name now Shey. Don't be Oluwa Sheyitan they call you. I said, no, be Oluwaseyiton. He said, your name now Oluwaseyiton now. Just take Sheyi from Oluwaseyiton and Love from Lawrence and make it together and make Lawrence. And I said, wow, this is some sort of confirmation, you know. And that was how I adopted the name Oluwaseyiton. And then I picked Sheyi from Oluwaseyiton and Love from Lawrence. And every time I tell people my name is Sheyi Law, people now ask, they're forced to ask questions. Did you study law? And so that became a means to start a conversation with anybody. And after I started using that name, Sheyi Law, it's never been anybody stopping me.
Well, let's just say that you were anointed on the altar. Abi? On
an altar that I was deemed not fit to be on.
Deemed not fit to be on.
You know, so I'm a child of grace.
Obviously. We have just about 4 minutes or so now to go, but let me ask you this one. You've told us this story, and I'm very, very sure that a good number of people are challenged, inspired, motivated by it. One of the lessons that I picked from the things that you said is things could be really tough and rough. And people hear these motivational speeches that no matter how tough it is, you know, just hold on and all those things. How easy is it to hold on when things are really tough?
I think one of the first things that a lot of people need to learn is gratitude. If you learn to be contented, contentment doesn't mean that you're not ambitious. Contentment is being grateful for the level that you are, hoping to attain another greater level. If you learn to be contented and you've learned to give your heart to gratitude, then to wait will become easier.
Okay, we have to close now, but you are going to have to tell us who you are. The Senate is closing already. They're having their valedictory session now. You have to, and I know that you've got quite some flack for this government came into, but tell us the funniest thing that you can reference, maybe as a joke or whatever, about this National Assembly. That is this Senate or this
the ninth Senate that is closing already, because we're moving to the 10th Senate. I think one of my favorite thing that happened in that Senate is I have forgotten, I don't know why the name just skipped my mind now. The mind that said our economy is, our economy is doing like this, That man seems to be a prophet. You know, the man said a BFLA can make you a billionaire without you even coming out to the sun. And quite unfortunate, Emefiele will be seeing the sun very soon.
What do you mean by that? Don't even answer that question. Well, I wasn't expecting that this conversation will go this way, but I am personally challenged by your story this morning, Sheila. Thank you so much for your time. And I am very sure that this is not going to be the last of it. Idilioye. Oluwaseyiton, you should put that in inverted commas. Lawrence, Aletile.
All the names very meaningful. Strong meanings.
Certainly.
Idilioye means from a royal family.
I don't need to be told.
Oluwaseyiton, God has perfected this.
Yeah.
Lawrence means crowned with victory. And Aletile means my end has not come. There is still hope for me. And so, when you bear that name, you're confident of success always.
The fact that you're even a foreigner, I didn't mention that one. Born in Gabon and you're in Nigeria. We'll talk about that one another time. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome,
And that's our show this morning. Sunrise, another episode is certainly coming up to you next week, Saturday. In the meantime, of course, don't forget that the Senate is closing as we speak, having their valedictory session. It's expected that the Vice President will be there. It's expected that the First Lady also will be there. Both of them are senators in the 9th Assembly. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend and a beautiful week ahead. It's Monday. Monday is a public holiday. Don't forget that one as well. It's June 12th. Amaya Makinde. Have a wonderful, wonderful time. Bye for now.